Continuing on from last time, Enzan and Netto rush off to confront Regal, both of them frustrated that they just didn't see it. It's the monocle, dude. Never trust anyone with a monocle, especially if it's cybernetic. Well, okay, at least not ones that have them set in them like Regal does. And it turns out he was at a familiar location too, that aquatic hotel from the first season. Good callback. The thing is, though, he never used the place. All that's there is a computer with freight shipping manifests, whose visits to port happen to coincide with surges in dark chip distribution. The closest ship isn't far off the coast, meaning it's likely where Netto was taken. And this mess so rattling Enzan that he's not just accepting that Netto's being part of this, he's asking Netto for help.
一緒に来てくれるか? お前の力が必要だ. 当たり前だ!
A long way away from the character he was a year and a coup ago. Sure enough, they reach the freight liner and see Yuriko's helicopter atop it, alongside dimensional area converters mounted into the ship's superstructure, meaning they were expected. Then barely managing to get on board before the area's barriers clip their helicopter's wings, and they're surrounded by viruses that were actually sent by Shademan. Yes, Shademan has begun his own coup against their benefactor at last, though it's not exactly clear initially which one of the dueling antagonists set up the dimensional area, considering Shademan's work on constructing his own. But yeah, it was Shademan, as Regal just wanted to talk. Regardless, with the field up, Netto and Enzan can cross-fuse and deal with the viruses, which are just one massive delay in getting to Regal. And it kind of shows how short-sighted Shademan continues to be, that doing this is all that he thinks would be enough to unseat the man who has manipulated them all from the start. Still, you can hear the anger in Enzan's voice as Netto starts to use some of his battleships to speed up getting to Aneta. As well, it makes it easier, well, why would he yell? They can reload their active memory, as Netto's shown before, to get around their 5-chip limit in between breaks in battle, like they have right after this, before they encounter Yuriko here. She invites them deeper into the ship, with them directed straight to Regal.
いかにもこの私だ。
なぜだ?
おっと、迂闊に近づくと、この子が危険だよ。
That's not really answering his question, dude. I mean, I know what's going on with the anime version of Regal, but we're not there yet. But yeah, it's exposition time at last. First off, yes, the Darkloids, as suspected, were spontaneously created navis created from remnant ghost data of deleted ones amalgamating into new ones, similar to how data viruses have come about in the .exe timeline. Yuichiro was spearheading development of means to fight such wild navis, in part tied to his synchrochip research, while Regal in turn got the idea to just use them, and with Shademan's assistance found the source of the dark aura they generate, leading to the dark ship's development as a massive hyperpower condensed source of such. And while Shademan just wants to rule the world without any concept of what that would entail...
You don't want to take over the universe, do you? No. You wouldn't know what to do with it, beyond shout at it.
Well, Regal has bigger plans than just world conquest. Are you sure? 'Cause knowing what I do about later, it's basically indistinguishable from that. But regardless, Regal has already won his war against Shademan. His dark chip corruption has already enslaved all the Darkloids and subjugated them to Regal's will. Shademan's the only free one of them left. And thanks to the dimensional area diversions, he's got them all directing their aggression the wrong ways. It's also revealed that the dimensional area tech, yeah, that actually came from Wily, or at least the idea for them. Wily could never get them to work, so scrapped that plan in favor of others revolving around controlling Pharaoh Man, as we've seen. Which is a detail I just do not like. After all, from everything we've seen, Wily didn't like how the World Network was developed and his terrorist goals were all about means by which to destroy it, creating dimensional era converters to realize cyberspace data? That feels rather hypocritical. Like, maybe as a means to turn others against the World Network before it became ubiquitous so people could focus on the real things in front of them, but that doesn't really work for me. Before we can get the revelation that Regal is Wily's son, though, Shademan shows up and goes straight on the attack and revenge, only for our heroes to get in the way. Regal is, after all, human, and no matter what he's done, he has to go through the human legal system and not be summarily murdered. Ha! Just wait. Karma is an apt description for his ultimate end. Actually, for Enzan, it's because Netto was in the line of fire. He's gotten rather obsessed rather quickly about her safety, which of course gave the shippers and the audience immense fodder. Their interference makes Shademan decide to deal with the two net savers first, which is where the problem comes in that Shademan can still kick their asses.
Cannon! Sword! High cannon! Wide sword! Mega cannon! Zeta cannon! Long sword! Dream sword! Ike! Cry!
Even them doubling up program advances doesn't do much more than rip off one of Shademan's arms, despite the blowback both suffer from being in proximity to the resultant blast. Even then, with Netto and Enzan disabled, all Shademan does is walk straight past them, too focused on Regal and his revenge. Only, Regal's not actually there. He never has been. Who has is his net navi, Laserman. And none of them were able to tell thanks to Laserman not only being a subservient AI to Regal, but Laserman sharing his voice.
バクロイドのような低能な存在でないことだけは確かだ。黙れ!
Literally, it seems.
バカ。
Well, so much for digital matter not being able to affect the real matter that creates it. Seriously, that was so consistent until now. Actually, no. As remember, these are not Regal's dimensional converters that have those protections built into them, but the ones Shademan constructed. Moreover, Laserman's attack cracked the casing of Shademan's, which is different than attacking the emitters themselves. You can actually break electronics by damaging the case, as it causes the electronics to shift in ways they weren't meant to, which is a more reasonable means by which to disable them. Moreover, the type Shademan uses are dimensional converters that were realized from cyberspace themselves, meaning the emitters themselves are digital constructs, thus not applicable to that cannot damage the emitters rule we've seen thus far. Regardless, it's damaged enough that the dimensional area starts to destabilize, logging all the viruses and Shademan himself off of the real world, and allowing the boys to rescue Anetta. Unfortunately, we're not at the happy resolution yet. Shademan deciding that if Regal's not going to face him, he'll just blow up the ship he's on and leave it at that for his victory. He's not on the ship. He never was. One of the good things about Regal throughout this season, he's always one step ahead of everyone because he keeps active tabs on what everyone is doing, thus knows how to respond instead of thinking that his enemies are beneath him. As opposed to his game counterpart where he ultimately devolves into being a muhahaha, evil be thou my good, nonsense antagonist. No, Anime Regal for the most part is smart, and always looking to play the angles he can to get ahead, and even revealing himself and being briefly part of things by masquerading among the good guys is all working towards his ultimate end goals. If he doesn't get rid of his enemies this time, oh well, try again, as long as the other things I'm working on are progressing. He eventually loses that cool and control later on, but for more understandable reasons with regards to him just not being able to accept the losses he suffers despite, in his mind, doing everything right that should have allowed him his win. Granted, that's all for later. At the moment, with Yuriko taking the only remaining working helicopter, Enzan, Netto, and Anetta are trapped on board a ship Shademan's looking to explode. Thus stopping him is the bigger priority. I mean, he was in JoJo's. However, with time short and their navies that outmatched by even an injured Shademan, well, Netto thinks there's only one option. Blue's going mad with the Dark Aura gives Rockman the time to stop the system from exploding, but unfortunately due to how that specific Dark Chip was designed to immediately birth the Dark Soul in its host, well, Blues is losing control of himself fast. With the last of his sense of self, though, he asks them to delete him. Instead of doing so, however, Rockman's ultimate program manages to save his true self as backup, inside of Yes, the definitive soul unison, Blue's soul, which manages to one-shot Shademan with the sonic boom it unleashes. But unfortunately, this has caused Blues to be immediately taken over by the Dark Soul, lost to parts unknown. Shademan returns to his throne, only to find Laserman having taken over, and found the synchro chip data Shademan had previously stolen a long while back, which is needed for the next phase of Regal's plan, all while Shademan surrounded by his former subordinates, and left for dead by all of them. The wrap-up. We have big villain reveal, for Regal owning up to being the bad guy, while at the same time showing off how strong his Navi is in comparison to everyone else. We have come to the dark side, for Blues being consumed by the Dark Soul. To be fair, that was Regal's ultimate plan throughout this, you just don't expect the twists and turns the bait and switch of these episodes invoke. We've got I've Got Soul, for the acquisition of Blues, aka Proto Soul. And not in a fun way to get it, considering its primary use for the near future will be the means by which Netto and Rockman will have to fight their rival Navi that's forcibly been turned evil, initially to save their lives. This is one of the major wham episodes of the series, due to this having major consequences up and down the story. With Blues now in enemy hands, and working for them on top of it, it means Enzan can no longer join in on the cross-fusion fights, leaving Netto and Rockman at even more of a disadvantage than they may have been before, with the possibility for backup. The preceding episodes had shown how much the True had grown as people and in their respect for one another, and it finally begins a proper character arc for Enzan, as he's brought into focus to actually need to progress down one again. As I've charted, yes, he has softened and become better than the seemingly arrogant, dismissive jerk you could have read him as from the start of the series. But here, he is more than anything else, finally provided a motivation for him to improve himself in ways he had blocked himself to. As has been discussed before inside the show, Enzan and Blues' relationship was of a master and a servant, with signs they viewed the other as more than that, but both were unwilling to push for more. We see here as Blues has turned against them those signs that they'd wished they'd made that push, to be more like Netto and Rockman in how they interacted. Just at the moment, they're prevented from doing so, and in part because Enzan was so driven to make up for a failure towards someone else as well. And as I said, this entire arc for them is all about consequences and fallout, as now he has to find a new way to fight and contribute, all while having a personal story to get his Navi and friend back. But that arc isn't pushed to the side just yet. After all, you really think they weren't going to try at all to see if they couldn't make an attempt to recover him early?